Good afternoon, everyone. We want to first thank you all for joining today's webinar. We know, like Dr. Solberg just mentioned, you're all dealing with challenging situations right now and still adjusting and adapting to, the present circumstances and working from home, trying to engage students remotely on top of balancing everything else. So, we hope you find this webinar informative and helpful. My name is Ron Gibbs, and I'm with Graduation Alliance. And we're excited to have Dr. Scott Solberg lead today's webinar on the importance of monitoring students' resiliency and the crucial role that social emotional learning will play in re-engaging students when they do return to school in the fall, however that may look. Again, we know things are very much up in the air right now. Dr. Solberg is a professor with Boston University. Scott, I don't know if you want to go to that next slide and with some of your background on it. He's got a background in counseling psychology, and he's got past experience as a licensed psychologist specializing in treating anxiety disorders. He's currently collaborating with education systems to more effectively prepare all youth to graduate with the skills they need to find work and life success. There's a lot more detail and information on that in his recent book, Making School Relevant with Individualized Learning Plans. Dr. Solberg's research focus is on resiliency and how setting career and life goals helps youth and adults become proactive, adaptable, and resilient for managing future uncertainty and life changes. And really that's what we're focusing on today. As we look to how important it will be to focus on resiliency and social emotional learning to be able to meet student needs as soon as possible when they do return to school. Before I hand it over to Dr. Solberg, I'll mention we will have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. And we'll also be able to provide a recording of the webinar following the session, as well as some additional resources. I'll plug some of those in the chat box. And I will do my best to keep an eye on that chat box. And if you could go ahead and like Dr. Solberg mentioned at the beginning, locate that now if you haven't already done so, and let us know who you are and where you're logging in from and what you hope to get from the webinar today. That would be great. With that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Solberg.
Great. Well, thank you, Ron. Yeah, we do want it to be as interactive as we can make it, obviously in a virtual space. And given that it's a webinar instead of the traditional Zoom, it means that everyone's on mute and we're not going to see anyone on this one, but we are recording. So if there's elements, if you're getting in late or other things, you'll have this to come back to as well. So let me just kind of set the stage. And while we're setting the stage, also to begin just clarifying in terms of what we're going to be doing in this session. So one, we want to, we've got these youth that are going to be coming back. We don't know, right? Few of us know exactly what kinds of issues have gone on. We're working in Boston public schools, and we have kids who are getting COVID, and we have parents who are at risk, and we have people that are passing, and all the other stuff we have in context with the Black Lives Matter movement, and all the prayers we have for making sure our city stays safe, but that we address some of these changes. And all of our youth are involved in all this. And so we don't know what we're going to be getting in fall. And so this is why we thought it would be important to have this. We're going to show this from a trauma-informed strategy and some of what the trauma indicators will be, which a lot of you know, but just to remind ourselves, and then walk through an assessment tool. And this is, ScholarCentric and Graduation Alliance is a company that has the research-based tools that I created over many years. And we've created a strategy to communicate, we believe, in a way that enables you as educators to have actionable information to really dig down deep and support your students. And we want to show you kind of how that works. Whether you use our resources or not, the idea of focusing on social emotional learning from a resiliency standpoint, we believe is the right answer. And we've got very close colleagues with Castle and other organizations that are involved in this. And so we know it's a big family that are involved. But I think this is an answer to something that we can really help, because these are malleable change constructs that can really help build youth capacity to adapt and adjust to the challenges they're facing. So we'll talk through that. Click on here. Okay. So, we just had another session that Ron and I did on COVID being so problematic and how to do our own self-care, and we'll send you that link. And in that, one of the things that we have to remind ourselves that makes this so problematic is that our youth, as well as us as adults, we all know this, it's the huge disruption that's going on, right? Seeing in my own town that we're going to start having outdoor dining is like, oh my gosh, breath of fresh air. I might actually be able to get out of the backyard. I mean, the amount of disruption cannot be minimized, as well as insecurities that this has created. We've had so many that have lost their job, and so a lot of our youth have families now with food insecurities, employment insecurities. We can't even underestimate the amount of disruption that's going on, trying to live together in a single space for days and months at a time. Again, the kind of insecurities and clarity. So we have to be representing that there's a kind of that there is that instability that creates an emotional reaction. We threw some pictures together to kind of hopefully typify this. And if you want to throw in the chat which of these pictures represents you best, I know for me on any given day, and I would say even today, there's a lot of these, almost all of them at some point connect up, especially this woman with the hair in the air. There's that moment of just sheer, are you kidding me, kind of frustration and anger. So we've got lots of emotional things going on around this grief response that we all have to be having. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, and our youth feel this and they don't know how to express it, right? They're new into this. They don't necessarily have the emotional kind of articulation, for example. When I first designed our measures at the college level, one of the things that was interesting is our symptoms piece that's really around their emotional, psychological well-being. That measure at the college level had really clear indicators for anxiety versus depression. And when we went to the high school level, they all came together. There was no distinctiveness. So our youth do not necessarily know how to unpack the differences between the denial, the anger, the sense of depression or feeling blue that they might be feeling. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to help them understand the grief while we're also working through our own. And that's probably what makes this so critical, is that we're going through this along with them, but yet we've got to be ready in fall to support them as they go through this. And then we also have to be very sensitive to the elements of trauma. And I think this is something that we have to be ready for in fall. I know we're nervous about it. What are we going to be getting back? But I think we can expect a good percentage of our youth are going to be having some clinical features that are going to come up, that they're not going to have the energy. How are they going to how are they going to showcase that's going on? Well, they're not showing up, right? We've got these remote learning opportunities, or maybe, in some states like Massachusetts, they're going to have 10 students a day in a classroom. For a particular classroom. So if they're not showing up physically, and if they're not showing up online, in all likelihood, we've got to be on the alert that we may have someone who's either being traumatized or is in a life situation of so much disruption that they can't get organized or have the support systems to get organized to be able to join in on this learning. And that's where the huge social injustice and equities come in when we're dealing with urban youth, youth of color, low-income families and such, rural as well. So we need to be thinking on those. But these are some of the, the big indicators. And I think the SEL measures that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be able to identify. You're going to be able to see, are these students having higher levels of sadness? Are they feeling more agitated, right? The nervousness and the anger. Are they having difficulty sleeping? And social connections, are they having trouble in there? We don't necessarily go into the intrusive thoughts or flashbacks or nightmares, but that's something that's easy for us to add into as we talk with our students. But not feeling positive, just kind of the avoidance. These are all key critical things that we need to be thinking about as we go through this. So, whoops, sorry, went too far ahead. So we have lots of going on around social emotional learning, right? We've got states that are involved in this. We know we've got the Elementary Secondary Education Act that's starting to lean into it. We're all starting to talk about this. And I really do believe this is our pathway to start helping youth learn how they can manage more effectively through this COVID era and help us to help them more effectively get onboarded back into education. Lots of things around where SEL and understanding is going to be helpful. It's going to help us establish better school climate, so the youth are going to be connecting with each other. There's restorative justice activities for youth that have been in challenging situations. Lots of different things in that. But for our particular case, one of the things that we're looking at is that these SEL indicators that we're talking about, and I know they get used as non-cognitive, soft skills, all kinds of words used at it, but these particular social emotional learning skills, we have evidence, and I'll show you a little bit on that these are the early warning. These are the early, right? We talk about the ABCs, attendance, behavior, credits, as being indicators that students are getting off track. These are the predictors that happen before that, right? So when students are starting to feel stress, when they're starting to have these psychological, emotional kinds of symptoms showing up, when they're not connected, these are the things that will lend and predict that they're going to start not showing up as much, that there are going to be some behavior problems, and obviously their academic performance is going to start lagging. So that's why we really want to be leaning into the SEL as a big part of that. And what we're going to introduce is a research validated assessment strategy and what that looks like, and then how you can use it also as a predictive analytic for our most at-risk youth as well. And if you have some questions or clarifications, and Ron's going to be watching the chat box to see what's going on, but if you have some, please. And if you have some, big questions on that, use the Q&A box, because that'll allow us, it's more easy to track on the Q&A up there as we go forward. So our approach then around looking at social emotional learning in terms of the academic resiliency are these areas. They need to have an understanding that there's relevance to coming to school, as well as there's relevance to their future education, which means their post-secondary pathways. So that becomes an important area of assessment. Once they stop seeing a sense of future and a sense of hope, this does become, especially that post-secondary piece, it becomes an important marker that they're not emotionally on target right now, okay? Because once they lose that sense of future and that sense of hope, they start shutting down across the board. So that's where this relevancy piece becomes really important. Academic confidence is their self-efficacy. Are they feeling confident in their ability to do the academic work? And that starts to go down. I mean, they've had how many months off right now, so they've got to get back in to what's happening. And if they're feeling a really low sense of self-efficacy, that's going to be a strong indicator that they're not feeling a sense of power. They're not feeling a sense of emotional readiness to really engage in the academic pieces. Connectedness is where we're looking at their connections with their educators, their peers, and their family. And especially in COVID, their connections with family is going to be a really important barometer to know how has this been going. Are they feeling, they should be feeling strong connections? If they're feeling disconnected, that's kind of going to be telling us a sign of some additional support we might need to think about providing. Stress has to do with the pressure they're feeling. Just how pressured are they around finances? There's a financial stress indicator. Are they having trouble with the kind of financial insecurities that so many of our youth, 40 million adults out of work, so many of them are going to be in that, and we'll have an indicator for you to kind of see where they might be within that. But there's also the academic and social. Are they feeling stress around their relationships and such? These are big pressure points. And all that stress takes away from their ability to feel confident. They're interconnected, so we have to help manage on both of those. And then well-being is really that psychological and emotional distress. It's really about the agitation, the feeling blue. We use this as a screening tool, not a diagnostic, but as a screening tool to know, are they eating? Are they sleeping? Those kinds of things, which could indicate really strong, important indicators that they're not doing well. And again, these are going to point back to whether or not we need to immediately get in with more of a trauma-informed care setting and look at some wraparound supports in working with them. And then the intrinsic motivation is, are they feeling a sense that the work they're doing in school is relevant? Are they feeling like there's something about feeling the meaningfulness and enjoyment around the school? And again, this will be an important barometer as we go forward. So what's most important for me in all of this is the idea that, and thanks, Jay Bryant, we'll get to you as soon as we get through the main part of this, but thanks for throwing up a question. Let me get back here. So one of the things that's so important to us is that when the students take our survey and it goes through these different items that we just showed you, you need information that's actionable, right? So we have this first one that just gives you a sense of how's our school doing? What are the areas that they may be having the most challenge? And we're going to expect that stress indicator is going to be a lot higher. That well-being area is going to be in the red zone. We're expecting that, right? But this allows us as an organization, as a full sense of our teachers, to really understand that. But we also need to know what's going on with each individual student. And so the other thing that's nice is we can get an array of whether it's the importance of education, this academic self-efficacy, those social connections, where these areas might be that we're having particular problems and challenges. And this is kind of what it looks like on the full profile. So you're getting a sense of the student, and we can see across as a dashboard. When we see red, we know we've got some areas that we may need to follow up on with this particular student. And that's the point, right? Who do we need to get to right away? The purple is really interesting, and we did this longitudinal study with our colleagues over in Denver public schools, to see whether or not entering freshmen, so as they're leaving their middle school and they've taken the survey, how do these predict their future academic success? And more importantly, can it predict just what level of risk they might be for not doing well and actually dropping out? And so what you're seeing in the purple are differentiated levels. And just as an aside on this, and Ron can probably tell you more stories as well, we've had so many principals call up saying that the assessment's wrong because their valedictorian showed up with a purple index. And all we do each time, and we'll tell you the same if it happens, is go talk to the student. And when they do, we have found so many cases, right? The valedictorian, we didn't know she was homeless. We didn't know she just tried to commit suicide. We didn't know that she had been hospitalized. That all of this stuff that was going on that wasn't showing up on their academic profile yet, but yet were signs that they were in distress, right? And in all of these cases that there were some traumatizing issues going on. So these kinds of, this is as a screening tool, allows you to identify who you need to get to right away to begin having deeper conversations with. This is kind of a newer piece that we're looking at in terms of some of the data that's being recorded out, so you can see kind of how that looks. What I showed you before was one of the older views, but you're also in this, you're getting an indication of each area. Remember I said family support is going to be an important barometer for you? So under connections, we want to see how they're doing around family support. Are they feeling connected with their family? Really important. Peer connections, where are they at, right? So we want to see where that is. And then also the stress. You've got your financial stress. Is this high for them? Do we have a situation where we're going to need some social work services to make sure that they can get their food insecurities and other things addressed as they're moving forward? And certainly the social stress, just connecting back is going to be really tough. And then we have students are going to get their own individual report, and we want them to have an individual report so they can have deeper conversations with their school counselors. It can be done as a group setting as well. It doesn't have to be done in individual. They can look at their own scores and have a conversation to kind of think through what's going on. But certainly at the individual level, for the students to be able to reflect. Remember I said it's hard for them around grief to begin differentiating the different challenges and emotional issues that are going on. This can help them begin to think through what it is that are the elements that are most in distress for them, right? So here you're seeing that their family support is lower than where the average success profile is. Their peer connections are a bit lower. The question then is allowing the student to say, is this a problem for me? It may be, it may not be, but we're letting them take some control over the dialogue, but we're giving them areas that we're hoping that they'll look at as they think about these. So the personalized report becomes really important in all of this. So this at-risk indicator I was showing you, remember the purple index? And I told you a little bit about where we got that. What's most exciting about it for me is that, oh, I thought I may have had it on here, is that there are different dimensions being pulled out of that survey, right? It's the importance of my post-secondary, seeing a future orientation is one of the risk indicators for dropout risk. It's the agitation within the stress. It's the social self-efficacy, right? It's specific elements that together combine, and the more severe they are, the higher the likelihood from our earlier warning research, the more likely they are to not do well in school. And those are the ones that we need to go after. And that's what's so important, is there's so many factors that they have combined for. And so we've had students that have green across the whole thing, but for those very specific areas, they're at risk. And so it is an interesting way of teasing out and trying to find those students that you can, it'll help you to spend the time on the students that are most in need. So we also have other kinds of measures that can also, as we're starting to look at college and career readiness, I know we're really concerned about our 11th graders and the loss that they had in terms of not getting into some of the pieces that they needed to start thinking about their future. So looking at their career planning, looking at goal setting, we're connecting a lot of this work to those states, and it's all of you, just about all of you, are now involved in individualized learning plans, right? And all of you have a different name for it. So if you're from Colorado, it's the Individualized Career and Academic Plan. Delaware, Student Success Plan. Massachusetts, My Career and Academic Plan. But ways to think about how these social emotional learning dimensions is part of their personal management. It falls under the career management strategy. So it helps them think through, are they able to succeed well in school, and what can they make some some efforts on, right, to manage. And each of those areas we have that are malleable. So we can work with them as counselors, we can work with them as educators to design strategies to support them in addressing some of those areas. Here we are. So this was the slide, sorry, I had it out of order. So the discriminant analysis for looking at the at-risk, as I said, importance of college, the agitation, classroom self-efficacy, academic stress, and meaningfulness of school. These are the things that combine around that risk level. And so there's no individual thing that makes them at risk, as we know, for dropping out of school or getting grade levels behind because of not passing courses. But from our work, we had pretty strong that the more we had up to an 85% positive prediction, the more severe they were on these areas. So we're feeling confident about that these are the things to be most concerned about. And again, we also talked about how this is all connected up with CASEL. We're working closely with CASEL in these kinds of areas. This was another presentation we had done on this, and many of you that are working with CASEL, which is the Collaborative on Academic and Social Emotional Learning, that this is a group that's working with states around designing both teacher training, but also helping educators really get their heads wrapped around engaging in these practices. And so what we've done is align how our assessment tool kind of connects up with these CASEL areas. And so we think we've hit all 5 of the big domains as we're looking through that. So for those of you that are really strong in social emotional learning already, and your first question is, hey, we've already got a strong SEL, how does this connect? Here's an example of how you can make those connections. And certainly we can provide more information if you're needing on that, and we can certainly add to the more questions on that. So this was kind of a brief thing, and we can certainly go through in more depth, but I wanted to be guided by now your questions and your ideas. We wanted a short, brief piece because a lot of you are busy, and we wanted to keep your attention for the main key points. But now we'd like to open up and have you start throwing down on your Q&A things that maybe we went through too quickly that you'd like to have more information on, or maybe there's other questions that weren't addressed that you'd like to talk about. We'd certainly like to do that. So the question from Jay Bryant is, as a counselor, how do we help teachers see the difference between a student who's failing due to SEL versus the one who's not trying? And I guess, it's really hard, right? We know that deciding not to try is actually part of that SEL piece too, right? Why aren't they finding this is relevant and meaningful? And we find that there's a lot of youth who just are emotional, as you know. There's going to be health issues. There's going to be other traumas that are going on, or other things that are obviously more important than school. And so, yeah, I think it is taking that personalized strategy, using these SEL areas to follow up with questions. Hey, it's, what do you're looking at your family, your connections with family. What are your thoughts about what's there? I don't want to tell them they have a problem. I want to say, what are your thoughts? And allowing that to get unpacked. And then if they're willing to bring the family in to have a deeper conversation, we can talk about that. What are some things going on, or some resources we get to the home? What are some supports we can figure out, right? A lot of it is, and if you're not listening, right, there's a lot of problems out there in our society, and a lot of our youth are saying, so why do I want to get ready for the world of work, right? This is absolutely ridiculous. And we need to help them find hope. We need to find some future sense of understanding of where they can find themselves in the world. And so we got to help them get back in and see how they can resolve some of these major problems, right? We've got the racism, we've got policies that are problematic. We've got this we've got this amazing sense of an economy that's running well for those who can invest, but not running for those who need jobs. How is that possible? How do we help youth start to embrace some of the inequities that are going on and start finding out what they can do about it? These become great opportunities for helping them realize they do need to lean in a little bit differently on this. And so, Jay Bryan, if I've not answered that well, please throw in another question for more clarification as we're going, because I'd love to continue that dialogue. And then Kylie, thanks. So elaborate more on CASEL. Yeah, so, CASEL.org, real easy to get to. This is an amazing group of individuals. It's out of Chicago. It's the University of Illinois at Chicago who put this together. They now have their own organization. Roger Weisberg is the founder, one of the most nicest people you would ever meet in your life. He's amazing. The people that are working there, that are running this, are so focused on trying to get you resources to support you and working with youth. It's amazing. They have a wonderful COVID SEL response. how to work in a remote environment around social emotional learning skills. So we definitely, you can definitely Google them and find it within very quickly. You can find those things. And in a moment, I can take this off recording and I can try to go find that. But Ron, if you have access to that, I know it was listed in our last piece that we had done as well.
Yeah, we'll send out a number of resources following this, including, I know people have been asking about the slides.
Great.
We'll include
Great.
that, a recording, and some other resources,
Yeah.
SEL from home resources and things like that we've also compiled and made available as well.
Yeah, so Dee Brown, so actually we have the assessment tool, ScholarCentric has that assessment tool. So all of that data you just saw, there's an online assessment where you go in, the students fill it out, you press a button, and you get those reports. So it's done in a way to be accessible and quick, so you can get a quick turnaround, and it allows you to get the students an individual report as well. Ron, you can give the details on that, how many items and how long it takes.
Yeah, it's a 20 to 30 minute online assessment. Generally 20, 30 minutes, a little over 100 items. Sounds like a lot, but it's a pretty quick assessment.
Yeah, it was designed to be quick, and it's been validated. We've done a lot of research on it. And so Gretchen, you can reach out. Ron can send a link here with his, I think we have his info at the end as well, but Ron can let you know. And I think there's some trials that you can do just to see how it works. And Lisa, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. I just wanted to finish off with Kylie's important question as well. And Gretchen and Dee Brown, if you've got more questions on the assessment tool, throw them in and we can certainly get on that. It's not free, Dee Brown, in a sense. Unfortunately, it's the company that has it, but it's not as expensive as you might think either. Normally, I do more of the research around this, but because of the crisis we're in, I have not seen yet another measure that is this action oriented. So I really wanted to get things out. If you were looking for funding, for those of you in CTE type situations, you probably have access to Perkins funding that could be used for this. Certainly Safe Schools and other kinds of dollars that are out there for this could possibly help, but that's not my area of expertise on it, but I know Ron can probably help with that. But again, we did it because this is the kind of thing that I think you need in your hands to really support your students. Back up though to Kylie just quickly, and then we'll move to Lisa, and then certainly add more questions as we go along. So Kylie, the other thing about Castle that's awesome is they have all kinds of programs. They're not producing, they're evaluating and they're communicating. And so they look at all the different SEL curricula out there, and they've validated and verified whether they're really good. The issue they have is that it's really hard to get into SEL conversations at the middle and high school level. And what they're realizing, and they're about to come out with an amazing report on looking at this from the employability perspective, right? That we know that these SEL skills are the same skills, especially those of you on the phone from the CTE world. You know these are the skills they need to be better employees. We know these are the gaps in skills that our employers are saying are missing. And so once we help our educators recognize that they're not just helping to build better classrooms, but they're helping provide students with the opportunity to become career ready down the road, we're hoping that our educators as a whole are going to become more bought in. And so Castle, I'm working actually with Castle on that conversation and in some of their states to help really build that piece. And I'm just really impressed with the next steps that they're getting into. So really good area of resource, lots of communication materials, lots of supports. Definitely look up castle.org and these are all free access. And a lot of them are open access, so you can reuse the materials. So Lisa, how do we encourage students to become comfortable at home and no longer care to be educated at school? How do we get them there? So this is my thought, and I'm not saying we've researched the answer, but this is where I'm going with, and I'm working with our schools right now in Boston to try to work on it at this level. I think we can use this as an opportunity to help you start to think about what their mission is in life, right? What is the point? And I started to talk about it earlier. When we think about it as a life mission, we need to, and in Wisconsin, they're doing this. They're having the students go on and do virtual not job interviews, but interviews with employees in different job sectors. And they're getting thousands of kids excited to be on these calls. We can organize those calls in a way that it's about those people talking about how did they get into this? What's their mission? What's the point of all this? We need people involved in building a better environment. We need people interested in healthcare access, things that they know based on COVID have come up. why is it that we don't have open access to internet and some of the resources we need so we can do this learning? Can we find a way to help our students become impassioned around these issues and recognize how education can support them in developing the skills needed to pursue that mission, right? We're not talking about career goals. We're not saying they need to figure out what job they want. We want them to become impassioned about a difference they want to make in the world. And I think we need to start having these conversations. These are really smart kids. They get it. Our teenagers are organizing rallies. Our teenagers are out there getting global awareness around what's happening with our environment. The youth are ready to engage, and I think what we need to do is to help them help find them in that area of passion, and then begin to recognize that if they're not embracing school, we have a problem. One of the things we did in our last webinar, and Ron's going to get you the link to that, both to listen, but also to get to a resource list, is Khan Academy's come up with tremendous resources to help our students that can get actively involved in learning, so it doesn't have to be waiting for a teacher to teach them. And that's really where we need to be going. We need our youth to become more self-determined, more proactive, and resilient as they're going through this. This SEL assessment we're doing is designed to see just how we can begin doing that, right? What are the deeper conversations we need to have about their future readiness, about their sense of hope, about what it's all about. So we can certainly go more into that, but that is, and so Lisa, if you have more questions and follow-up, but I agree with you. This is the issue we need to start looking at. They need to recognize that they are very much at risk for losing a lot and not being able to have some future hope and future readiness if we're not going to lean in to some of these opportunities. But we also have to become flexible in this as well. So Ron, if you could put the link in that Dee Brown was asking for in terms of the assessment tool, that would be great.
Yeah, I will reach out to everyone on with more information on the assessment, some more kind of detailed information, digging into the skills and sub-skills and academic risk index indicator, everything that Dr. Solberg mentioned. I also posted a couple links in the chat box with some of the resources from the previous webinar on SEL and COVID, as well as some of the SEL remote at-home resources we also compiled. Dr. Solberg, I also wanted, there's a question that came in the chat box about
I see it.
absence from
Jay Bryant.
class.
Oh, absence from class?
Yeah, and that was something that.
Let me come back to that. Let me start with Jay Bryant's piece, and then let's come over to that. Can you move it over to the Q&A? It's easier for me to talk. So Jay Bryant, awesome point, awesome question. So here's the good news right now. School counselors are realizing parents are finally ready to engage, and they're finding a better relationship with parents than they've ever had. So let's break it down as a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 proposition, right? Tier 1, how do we have a Zoom large webinar type session with our parents to go over the issues, right? Tier 2, how do we, if parents want to have follow-up conversations and follow-up groups around specific areas, how to help our students stay on track, how to manage all, I mean, our high school is letting every teacher decide on the remote learning strategy. That means our parents have to learn 8 different strategies for their particular student to figure out how to make all this work. So how do we have those conversations? How do we have conversations to support the behavioral needs, right? How do we get our psychologists to come in and help those parents that need tips on behavior management to keep the kids on time, or just to think about how to schedule, right? We could do that in a tier 2. And then tier 3 becomes the ones that need that extra help, right? So who are the parents that we realize, okay, they're struggling, they're having, and I've got them in the groups and families I work with where they need that one-on-one support. Now, maybe that one-on-one support they need is really getting them connected to a mental health professional, because this is just exacerbating areas and issues that they've had for a long time. And in my framing, and my background is in counseling psychology, so I'm saying this is exactly what I've said for the last 30 years. This is a great opportunity to learn skills on how to manage this, right? This COVID becomes a wonderful opportunity to address that sense of out of controlness, the lack of organization, the lack of routine. What a great time to sit down and really embrace this. And I mean that. And so we've got to get them connected to a professional, so it's not you needing to do the details. So if it is a one-on-one where you can help with some of the pieces that are relevant within school, great. But when we say as school counselors, we know that level of individual care is about the care. It's not about us needing to deliver it. It's about where can we get those personalized services. So thinking through on those terms, but there's a lot of great tier 1 work we can be doing, and parents are ready. And we record it so the parents who couldn't get on it have a place to go to learn it as well. And that's the reason why we're doing these webinars, to get you information. So even though we have others that are out there that may not have been able to get on the call, we've got the kind of information they can get to. So, so I really do think that we need to be coming up with a plan of attack for doing it on those levels. And Jay Brian, if you got more on that, let's get to that. And then I've got one more. Let's see what I've got here. One more.
Were you able to move
add
that to Q&A, but
okay.
The question is about, and this is something that I've been talking about with schools recently, about absence issues and addressing that, and some of these resiliency skills that are linked to that. And we look at student profiles, and I'll let you talk more about this, but students that don't feel connected, don't value education, don't manage stress well, those are areas to kind of target. But I'll let you kind of answer that question. But resiliency skills to address regarding absence concerns and strategies there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting area, because we've got a lot of different remote learning strategies going on, some that are asynchronous, some that are synchronous. I think the key at this point is, are they performing in relation to the skills that we need in order for them to become ready for the next grade level? And so this is a difference between, did you get your homework done in a timely way versus did you get it done, and are you testing out in some way or getting some evaluation, not just through testing, but is the performance on the activities and the different things we have that you need to do, is it demonstrating the skills that you need to be ready for the next grade level? So it shifts things a bit. I don't know that that needs to all happen in a synchronous way. I don't know that our youth have the focus on all the synchronous. So I think we need to be thinking through those kinds of levels. Now, Graduation Alliance, which is giving this sponsorship, we just had a wonderful presentation that was given to a number of state leaders about what makes a good quality remote learning environment. And one of there were two elements that I took as takeaways. One is, we need a coach, and this can be the school counselor. We need a coach that's focusing on their academics and checking in with them around, are they on target? What's their time management? Are they moving forward in a timely way? So the fact that they're not showing up or not engaged in the synchronous activities, it immediately cues us that we've got to get to them. And it could be we bring them into doesn't mean we have to bring them all one-on-one, by the way. We can have a drop-in that says, hey, I understand you may be having trouble. I'm having a drop-in. I want everyone to come in and we're going to talk through this, right? So you have an academic coach whose job is, what is it that needs to be completed? Let's talk about how you can get it completed and moving them forward. Then you have and they call it a person who's, forgetting the word here, someone who's supporting them, but supporting them in a way that's really advocating. They call it an advocate. We can also call it a support person. So this is the individual who's more interested in what's getting in the way, what's keeping you from being able to get on to class, to manage the life things, to find out what those areas of discord might be. Maybe there's the area we talked about at the beginning. We have so much disruption. Are there some basic disruptions and areas of concern that are getting in the way of focus and ability? Then how do we figure out the wraparound services to address that, right? So it's a second person, because what we want the coach to be is a real coach, right? Coaches aren't interested in why you didn't perform well. Their job is to set performance goals and help you step by step to get there, right? We need that person in their lives. And it's not going to be the classroom teacher who's trying to provide them with the academic information. And then the second one is that, let's figure out what's going on for you personally that provides you the supports you might need. So I think this idea in a remote environment of having both of these agencies or agents in the child's life, especially for those that we identify as coming off the grid, if you will. It could be those same students that if you use an SEL assessment skill like we've just presented, that by using that skill, you're already knowing which ones need to be on your list to be able to provide that kind of additional support. Then again, as we talk about, it doesn't all have to be one-on-one. Some of it can be a tier 2 type of activity where we're pulling them together to provide specific coaching kinds of support. And then we also have then the one-on-one around, let's figure out the wraparound individual services that they might need. And so I think that's a strategy that I'm really excited about, and something that we've not talked about that I feel has been talked about enough. I think states are still grappling with all this, but we need a structure for how we're going to support our students. And I'll tell you guys, for those of you that are school counselors on this call, this is your time to shine. This is why you're here. This is what it's about. It's not about you doing it all. It's about you figuring out how to manage so that every single one of those youth in your schools are being supported in some way. You have the ability to do that. At the same time, the ability to support our educators who are also going through this whole issue, have their own traumas and their own grief. And we gotta be ready to really use our skill sets to support the whole school and the whole organization. So really, when I say opportunity, that's exactly what it is. I think they're going to come away recognizing what it means to have valuable school counselors. Other questions? I'm not seeing any more on our list, Ron. I think they were so mesmerized, and I probably put them all to sleep, and they're having a really good nap right now. Is probably what's happening. But other comments or thoughts that you all have that you'd like us to respond to? I know that whole silence.
Don't see anything else in the Q&A. Don't
see
more coming into the chat box.
Yeah, so look, you know, ScholarCentric and Grad Alliance have other kinds of small, short ones like this where we're just trying to get resources out to you. We've given you the castle. We've also got the resource that Ron and I put together that was on a larger one about how we take care of ourselves and how we deal with self-care. And really hope you can look at that as well. We have so many things that are really to support you. So Jennifer has a question for you, Ron, about getting to the assessment.
Let me reach out and I'll touch base with you on
well, with everyone. You'll send an email out to everyone that'll explain to them how they can get access to what's going on in the resources.
Yep.
And all.
Yeah, that'll be included in the follow-up. In addition to some of those other resources I put in the chat box with like Dr. Solberg mentioned, those SEL from home resources and other resources handling COVID. So I'll send that out as well as information on potentially looking to utilize this ScholarCentric assessment tool.
And we'll get this recording out for you as well. So you'll have all that. Oh, good. I didn't take a nap. Thanks, Steve Brown. I'm glad. Well, you were asking so many questions. You didn't have time to nap. So, but I really appreciate it. The other thing I want to make sure we're clear on too is if you are in the school counseling area and those elements of it, we need to help the whole school recognize the emotionality of what's happening with our youth. And that's the other reason why I like the assessment tool that we're providing you, is it gives you a way to quickly communicate to your educators, even down to the classroom level, what they've got going on in their classrooms. And so we really need to help them recognize, not that they're going to solve it all, but they're going to be aware of the fact that we're not in a normal setting. And before we start addressing their cognitive development, we've really got to be addressing this personal, social, emotional learning development as we go forward. So I want to thank you. And are the tools helpful for high school? Yeah, these were designed for middle and high school. And so these are definitely the area. We do have an elementary version as well. So we have you covered at all the different grade levels for this. Thanks, Kylie, for that quick question on there, which is really good.
Yeah, very helpful. And the assessment is key, and that's
right.
Like you said, working with counselors, there's a huge workload coming back.
That's
RTI teams, and having this data from the get-go helps. You mentioned that leading data helps RTI teams, counselors see where they need to kind of start with those different grouped, those different tiered interventions. The group looking at their trends, the individual students. Who's
and
think about
how awesome it's going to be when the teachers are now ready. And so those of your teachers, you can even say if this is true, but I'm going to expect once you have that data, your first question is going to be, what can I do when I talk with them, right? And so we can provide them with ideas as counselors. This is in our wheelhouse, providing some of the supportive questions to talk through, to at least acknowledge, recognize this is not normal, provide them with support systems. The educators don't have to do it all alone, but they can be at least willing and able. That shows the students that we have teachers that are genuine, authentic, caring, care about them, and that's how we get students invested in wanting to learn. The moment they feel they've got teachers who are going to be interested in really getting to know them, those students are going to want to learn from them. I think it starts, Jay Bryan is asking how we get teachers in it. It starts by giving them that assessment information so they can see what's there, and then it's providing them with specific ideas about how they can go about thinking through that. And this is again where with the trauma-informed work, the different pieces, we can certainly, this is in our area to research some of those areas. We can certainly, if you get questions on that and come back, we can provide some ideas. I'm sure Ron has some stuff in our previous work that can help out with that as well. So yeah, so I think there's more we can certainly talk about on that. But like stress management, right? We're talking about mindfulness. We have a lot in the document that Ron's going to send you. Mindfulness, ways of helping them structure their day so they can gain a sense of power. There's so many elements we can do to try to help break this down into bits that they can learn. But I'm also a big fan, especially now, of these smart kids going out and proving that they know the material, but maybe doing it through other ways. Khan Academies and other things. My son, we're so proud of my son. He really thrived in this COVID environment for one who has trouble being in school. He was amazing at being able to come up with a project where the engineering teacher wrote back and said, I'm redoing my lesson plan now because of his product, right? That he went out and did it in a different way and demonstrated the skills in a different way that got the teacher thinking in new ways. And so let's open this up so our students can really lean in and show their creativity, but also their sense of self-directed and proactivity in this as well. Okay. Really great discussion. I really appreciate everyone for Jay, Brian, D. Brown, and others for all your questions and all the comments. This was great. If you've got some other ideas of things you want us to follow up on, great time to do it either now in the chat or also send Ron a separate email. I'll put that down next. Here's Ron's email and my email as well. But we are looking to do this at least once a month unless we've got a lot of topics that need to be done. We think the summer is an important time that we thought it was going to be our rest time, but no one's going anywhere, right? We're not going anywhere, and we're trying to get ready for fall. So give us an idea of how we can support you in being ready for the fall and addressing some of these areas. And so please help us out. Please help us help you in that way.
Yeah, and I can absolutely provide a lot more information on implementing this. I know there's a kind of last minute question there about how do you recommend completing the assessment? I'm happy to talk through, how that can look, depending on what school looks like when we come back. It is an online assessment, but I'm happy to talk through implementation questions that you might have. And again, I'll reach out directly with some follow-up. We can dig into some things like that.
Yeah, let me hit Justin. Justin, here's what our data shows. If we address the SEL, the academics work out just fine. And I've got lots of research on this, and I can certainly show. Ron can send some of that out. But when our youth start getting actively engaged in these ILPs, where they get to think about their goals and their kind of what school's here for, and they start setting goals, all of a sudden they find school more meaningful and relevant. And once they find school more meaningful and relevant, you wouldn't be amazed, but now all of a sudden they're feeling more confident. And once that self-efficacy kicks in, we're seeing better grades, better attendance. We're seeing them manage their health better and stress better, and they're getting ready for that future. They're more future ready as they start thinking about their future. So if we focus on this dimension, the rest is going to work out, right? Even starting with teachers connecting with them to be able to see this is an amazing thing. So so Justin, email me. I'll send Ron the link to, it's basically research on our ILP work that I've done that hosts a whole bunch of research around these concepts. So I can send you that right away. You can always Google my name and you'll see a lot of research and stuff coming up as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Justin, thank you for that question. If we invest on this area to start our school, it's all going to work out is what I'm trying to say. Just the relationship with teachers alone is going to get us 70% of the way there, because they are not going to want to let that teacher down who they know cares about them and is willing to invest in them, right? So that's a really key piece to this whole thing.
I real quick want to answer that question about, Melissa, how often do you recommend completing the assessment? I don't know that we mentioned during this, but there is a post-assessment version with post-assessment reporting. So, if you're able to assess as soon as possible to get this data for students at the beginning of the school year, that's ideal so that your team can have it, this trend data, the student profiles as they get back, and start working with that right away. And then at the end of the school year, or end of semester, if you've got SEL specific programming, that's when you can do that post-assessment and look specifically where your students as a group, grade levels, cohorts, individual students are making gains in these SEL, these resiliency skill areas.